On the afternoon of September 24, 1971, two teenagers set out to hunt squirrels in a remote forest near Cedar Rapids, Iowa. But what they found wasn't prey at all. It was a mystery that would haunt them for half a century. On the body of a rusted car, covered in overgrown weeds, lay the lifeless body of a young girl. She was only 17 years old. No identification, no full clothing, no explanation. And for 50 years, the question echoed: who killed Maureen Brubaker Farley? Welcome to the Case Files, where we reopen unsolved criminal cases, crimes that once shook public opinion and shattered faith in justice. Today, we're taking you back to the 1970s, a time when DNA wasn't yet a tool for solving crimes, when investigators could only rely on testimonies, physical evidence, and human intuition. This is a story about perseverance, generational pain, and a truth buried for half a century. In this episode, we're taking a deep dive into the infamous case of the Maureen Brubaker Farley murder, the mysterious death of a 17-year-old girl, and the 50-year hunt. Part 1. The Young Girl and a Shattered Dream. Maureen Ann Brubaker was born on July 4, 1954, in Sioux City, Iowa, into a modest but loving working-class family. She was the oldest of 7 siblings, and from an early age, she carried the responsibilities of being the eldest sister. Her mother, Mary Brubaker, later recalled that Maureen was always in a hurry to grow up, always wanting to protect her younger siblings, especially her youngest sister Lisa, whom she adored. Maureen was a smart, cheerful, energetic girl. According to her mother, she was bright as fireworks, a vibrant personality that reflected her birthday on America's Independence Day. But Maureen's life wasn't as easy as it appeared. She met David Farley when she was only 15 and he was 16. They quickly married in a whirlwind teenage romance. However, their vow to live together forever was interrupted when David was arrested for writing fake checks and sentenced to 3 years in Anamosa State Penitentiary. Maureen's decision was one of love and loyalty. She moved to Cedar Rapids in 1971, renting a small apartment in a boarding house so she could be closer to her husband and visit him regularly. Maureen worked as a waitress at a local diner, trying to support herself while waiting for the day David would be free. The 17-year-old girl didn't know that her decision to move to Cedar Rapids would lead her to a tragic end no one could have anticipated. Part 2. The Fateful Day. September 17, 1971. September 17, 1971 was an ordinary Friday in Cedar Rapids. Maureen had a shift at the diner, but didn't show up as usual. At first, people thought she had an emergency or was sick, but when her shift passed without her arriving or calling, the diner became concerned and reported her missing on September 20th. The manager of the boarding house where Maureen lived said she heard voices in Maureen's room on the afternoon of September 17th. It was a fairly calm conversation between Maureen and a man with a deep voice. What particularly caught attention was that the manager smelled heavy cigarette smoke, and the smell was somewhat sweet, an unusual detail she remembered very clearly. That was the last time anyone heard Maureen alive. No one saw her leave the boarding house. There were no signs of argument or resistance, only a terrifying silence. Part 3. Horrifying Discovery in the Woods. 7 days later, on the afternoon of September 24, 1971, 2 teenage boys hunting squirrels in the woods near a landfill on Ely Road Southwest, now Tate Cummins Park, stumbled upon a nightmare scene. An old car, abandoned long ago, lay hidden deep in the thick forest. Weeds grew over the roof and body of the car. And on that car, body lying still, was the body of a young girl. The scene was both haunting and heartbreaking. Maureen Brubaker Farley, 17, was semi-nude, without shoes, without socks, without identification. The body had begun to decompose, her skin pale, her body stiff. When Cedar Rapids police arrived at the scene, they quickly determined this wasn't an accident. This was a murder with signs of sexual violence. The autopsy determined Maureen died from a skull fracture after being struck in the head. She was also sexually assaulted before death. Investigators believed Maureen didn't die at the scene. She was killed elsewhere. Then the perpetrator transported her body to this remote forest area to dispose of it. But who? And why? Part 4. Initial investigation. The first suspects. Cedar Rapids police quickly launched a large-scale investigation. They searched Maureen's room, finding personal diaries and letters, but nothing suspicious. No items were missing, except for her work uniform. Investigators interviewed Maureen's neighbors, friends, and co-workers. Her family couldn't understand who could harm her. Maureen was gentle, had no enemies, and never mentioned conflicts with anyone. The first clue came from one of Maureen's co-workers. She said Maureen had plans to meet an old friend from Sioux City on Friday night, September 17th. That person promised to take her out, but didn't say where they'd go. First suspect, Bobby Moore. That friend was Bobby Moore, and he quickly became the prime suspect. Police discovered Moore had a complicated past, had been arrested several times, and had been accused of assaulting women. Maureen's husband, David Farley, had warned his wife not to contact Moore for this reason. What was more suspicious was that shortly after Maureen went missing, Moore appeared in Cedar Rapids, saying he came to help find his friend. And on the very day Maureen's body was found, Moore voluntarily checked himself into a psychiatric hospital in Sioux City. Investigators suspected Moore was tormented by guilt. However, when he was tested with a polygraph, Moore passed. He claimed he saw Maureen as a sister and had an alibi confirming he was in Sioux City at the time. Police couldn't completely remove Moore from the suspect list, but didn't have enough evidence to charge him. Second suspect, Gary Castle. Another suspect came into view, Gary Castle. A photo of Maureen was found in Gary's wallet, a very suspicious detail. However, Gary could prove his alibi confirming where he was that day. Police returned to Maureen's room to look for traces of Gary, but found no connection. Third suspect, George M. Smith, the friendly regular customer. Investigators returned to the diner where Maureen worked and interviewed regular customers. One customer named Jerry, actually George M. Smith, said he once saw Maureen with a man who looked like a hippie. But Maureen's husband, David Farley, specifically requested police interrogate George Smith. Why? George M. Smith, 52, was a regular at the diner and worked at a liquor store near Maureen's apartment. He once told Maureen he knew someone who could help get her husband out of prison. He also offered to help her fix her car. Police suspected this was just a pretext to approach the young girl. The age gap between them was huge. He was 52, she was only 17. What could a man like that want from a young girl? Smith told police he offered to help because he felt sympathetic to Maureen's situation. When asked where he was on the night of September 17th, Smith replied he was working at the Cedar Rapids bus depot from 1 p.m. to 9 p.m. Police checked and confirmed this was true, but something wasn't right. Smith refused to take a polygraph test, and he had repeatedly contacted police on his own to ask about the investigation's progress, unusual behavior. Still, there wasn't enough evidence to charge Smith, and in 1972, the case was suspended. All suspects had alibis. There were no leads left. Justice seemed to have died with Maureen. Part 5. Pain that lasted half a century. For the Brubaker family, the lack of progress in the case was a second shock in an endless chain of grief. Maureen's mother, Mary Brubaker, had to raise 6 young children alone, forcing herself to get up each morning to care for her children, while the wound of losing her daughter never healed. Just 6 months after Maureen's death, Mary Brubaker wrote to Cedar Rapids police, naming George Smith as the killer. But without evidence, her letter was just the hopeless cry of a grieving mother. Youngest sister Lisa, whom Maureen once loved so much, was only 4 years old at the time. This pain profoundly affected Lisa's life. In 1991, Lisa Schenzel decided to enter law enforcement, becoming a deputy sheriff in South Dakota and Nebraska. Perhaps that was her way of honoring her sister and seeking justice. For many years, Lisa used her position to remind colleagues about the impact of an unsolved case on victims' families. She called Cedar Rapids police multiple times, but never dared read the case file on her own sister. "I've seen a lot in my life, but just getting up the nerve to go over and actually sit down and read a case on your sister, I just never made that leap," Lisa admitted. Maureen's father passed away in 2002, and 2 of her brothers also died, all without ever knowing who killed Maureen. Part 6. Science Awakens. Year 2006. For over 30 years, Maureen Farley's case was forgotten at Cedar Rapids Police Headquarters. But in 2006, the first breakthrough appeared. Detective Doug Larison reviewed the case file and discovered unprocessed evidence: biological samples collected from Maureen's body in 1971. He took DNA samples and sent them to the lab. The results were very promising. Experts were able to build a DNA profile of a man. For the first time in 35 years, police had scientific evidence about Maureen's killer. But when they compared the DNA profile with the National CODIS database, there were no matches. The killer had no criminal record or had never had DNA taken. The investigation stalled for another 9 years. Part 7. Renewed Hope. Year 2015. In 2015, investigator Matt Denlinger was determined to reopen the case. He reviewed the entire file and created a list of 75 names that had appeared in the original 1971 investigation. Denlinger's plan was simple, but labor-intensive. Collect DNA samples from all suspects and compare them with the DNA profile from the crime scene. He enlisted the help of retired Lieutenant Ken Washburn and former Special Agent J.D. Smith. The team started from the top of the list, focusing on the main suspects from 1971. They found Bobby Moore and collected DNA. No match. Gary Castle also didn't match. By 2017, they had eliminated 15 people. In 2018, hope sparked again when forensic genealogy technology, the method that helped find the Golden State Killer, emerged. Cedar Rapids police sent the DNA sample to a company specializing in this technique. But the answer was a shock. The DNA sample was severely damaged and couldn't be analyzed. Once again, the case hit a dead end. Part 8. The decisive detail. The sweet scent of cigarette smoke. Disappointed but not giving up, investigators returned to traditional methods. They reconsidered each suspect, each testimony, each smallest detail, and they returned to George M. Smith. When investigating deeper, they discovered a truth. George Smith had passed away in 2013 at age 94. He was cremated. No DNA sample could be obtained. But then, Special Agent J.D. Smith, no family relation, found important information. George Smith's obituary. In the obituary written by friends and relatives, there was a notable line. George Smith was always recognized by the sweet fragrance of his cigarette smoke. J.D. Smith immediately recalled the boarding house manager's 1971 testimony. She smelled sweet-scented cigarette smoke near Maureen's room on the afternoon of September 17th, the day she went missing. That was evidence. George Smith was present in Maureen's room that day. This also proved Smith lied about going to work on Friday afternoon. He wasn't at the bus depot as he claimed. Additionally, Smith had just divorced his wife and lived only a few blocks from Maureen's boarding house. He knew where she lived and could easily approach her. More importantly, Smith worked in waste collection, so he knew the roads leading to the landfill where Maureen's body was found. Now, George Smith officially became suspect number 1. Part 9. Final breakthrough. DNA from a relative. Since Smith was cremated, Denlinger decided to try another approach. Collect DNA from Smith's relatives. He found George Smith's daughter and requested permission to take a DNA sample from her. The sample was sent for testing on May 24, 2021. Exactly 50 years after Maureen's body was found, the test results came back. DNA from George Smith's daughter matched the DNA collected from the crime scene in 1971. George M. Smith was the one who murdered Maureen Brubaker Farley. The entire investigation team felt this wasn't just a coincidence. After half a century, justice had finally arrived. Part 10. Mom is right here next to me. Tell her. Investigator Matt Denlinger clearly remembers the moment he called Lisa Schenzel, Maureen's sister, to deliver the news. "We found your sister's killer," Denlinger said. Lisa cried. Then she said something that stunned Denlinger. "Mom is right here next to me. Tell her." Denlinger was speechless. He didn't expect Mary Brubaker, Maureen's mother, was still alive. She was 86 years old, had waited for this answer for 50 years. "Moments like that are the reason I chose to be a police officer," Denlinger said. "I was so happy to tell that mother. We found your daughter's killer." Lisa Schenzel said she and her family felt a lot of emotions, including relief, pain, and some peace. "I still get goosebumps right now when I remember," Lisa said. "It was very emotional. I cried, and then I had to repeat it to my mom, and she cried. Just a flood of emotions." Although George Smith died in 2013 without facing trial, identifying the killer brought deep comfort to the Brubaker family. That answer was really important to the family. Their response and gratitude to Cedar Rapids police was enormous, Denlinger said. Part 11. Theory about the fateful night. No one knows exactly what happened on the day George Smith murdered Maureen Farley. However, based on evidence, police offered this theory. George Smith, 52, exploited the trust of Maureen, a 17-year-old girl desperate to help her husband get out of prison. Smith may have lured Maureen to his home under the pretext of helping her with legal matters or fixing her car. When Maureen arrived, Smith conceived the idea of forcing himself on her. Maureen refused and resisted. The situation escalated, and Smith may have attacked her with a hard object, striking her head, causing a skull fracture. After Maureen died, Smith most likely kept her body at his home until dark. Then he drove to the remote wooded area near the landfill, a place he knew well from his waste collection job, and placed her body on the abandoned car. Smith then returned home, continued living his normal life as if nothing happened, and even proactively contacted police to inquire about the investigation's progress to conceal his crime. For the next 42 years, Smith lived freely, married, worked, grew old, and died peacefully in 2013 at age 94. He was never punished, never had to face justice. Part 12. Significance of the case. The Maureen Brubaker Farley case isn't just a crime-solving story, but evidence of the power of forensic genealogy technology in solving cases decades old. This method, combining DNA analysis and genealogical data to trace suspects' relatives, has helped solve dozens of other cold cases across America, including the famous Golden State Killer case. This case is also a moral lesson about perseverance, humanity, and professional responsibility. People like Matt Denlinger, J.D. Smith, Ken Washburn, and Lisa Schenzel, the sister who turned pain into motivation, represent the spirit of justice that never backs down. Victims' families should never give up, because justice, though delayed, can still prevail, Denlinger urged. And perpetrators, no matter how long they hide, cannot escape the net of heaven. That's not just a statement for Maureen's case, but a message to thousands of families out there that someday the truth will be revealed and criminals will be called by their true names. Maureen Brubaker Farley was only 17 when her life was taken by an aging predator hiding behind a friendly facade. She never had the chance to become a mother, never got to see her husband free, never got to fully live her youthful dreams. But Maureen's legacy isn't death. It's the faith in justice that her family held firm for 50 years. It's the perseverance of investigators who never gave up, even when the case went cold. It's scientific progress that helped uncover secrets buried for half a century. Maureen's death will forever be an indelible scar in her family's hearts. But finding the truth brought some peace to the 86-year-old mother, to the sister who became a police officer, to the surviving siblings, and to Maureen herself, a young girl with simple dreams of a happy family. She can now rest in peace, knowing that justice finally came. If you liked this story, please like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss other shocking cases. Share this video to spread the message. Justice may come late, but it will never be absent. Thank you for watching the Case Files. Stay safe, and remember, the truth always finds its way.